just being so exposed to, a national, global pandemic and the operations and coming down from that. What stayed with me is, what do you want to do before you leave this earth? What is it in you that you want to pursue? And that's been fashion. Kind of came back to the front of my mind. It's like my passion, my baby. It's also my relief. And for me, this creative outlet is actually fueling me and allowing me to kind of continue to be inspired, even in my own role in healthcare.
Hey everyone, I'm Steve Loflin, and welcome back to Scholar Scoop. Today I'm talking with someone who has been a big part of the NSCS story for a long time. Our guest really embodies what can happen when you say yes to opportunities and trust what someone might think are just crazy ideas. Mira Yaache came to the United States from Trinidad and Tobago to attend Penn State University. Like many students, she got one of those letters in the mail from NSCS and decided to lean in. She stepped outside her comfort zone, got involved with the National Leadership Council, and eventually went on to serve as president and on our board of directors. Today, she's an administrator at Johns Hopkins University Medicine. And she's also the founder of a fashion brand, Math Designs, that has been featured at DC and New York Fashion Weeks. In our talk today, Mira shares how networking, persistence, and a willingness to take the next step can open doors you never could have planned, even when you're not sure you're ready. So let's get some Scholar Scoop from Mira. Hey there, Mira. How in the world are you doing?
Oh my goodness, it's my favorite person, Steve.
Oh,
Good to talk to you today.
it's funny that you say that because that's probably would be my lead. It's like, oh my gosh, I get to talk to one of my most favorite people today.
Yeah.
And I just think about a lot of years now, Mira, that we've actually been connected, and you've
We
been a
have.
part of so many significant milestones for NSCS. But through all of that, you've just become one of those people that I just admire so much, and I appreciate
Oh,
what
goodness.
you've done with your career and with the things that you're passionate about, which is why I immediately thought of you when this idea for Scholar Scoop was just marinating a little bit. It's like, well, when Scholar Scoop hits the ground running, I have to make sure I can see if Mira can squeeze this in. So thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
No thanks needed. It is my honor. You know that you're one of my role models. So it truly is an honor, a pleasure. And it means so much for me to still be connected to you and NSCS.
Oh, well, thank you for that. And, the way we're connected, I think is really interesting. And I think for college students or maybe others, that are thinking about how the world works,
Mhm.
I always love the story, like of how we got connected. And I think it would be fun if you just took a second, because I think there's so many little lessons in your story
Yes,
that can help people think about networking or connecting in ways that you don't even know where it might take you. So do you remember our
of
first little
course.
interaction?
I cannot forget it. It definitely was one of my most treasured memories in college. So I think by now, listeners are hearing an accent. So I am actually from the Caribbean. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. And I left home, I left the nest, Trinidad, and I came to college, ventured off by myself. And I came to Penn State. So, knew I wanted to pursue higher education in the United States. Of course, everybody knows America is the land of the possible, the land of the dreams. I had some extended family in Pennsylvania. I did my research on my own. It was a school that I just fell in love with, just culturally as well. And everything worked out. I got accepted to Penn State. So during my education in Penn State, I mean, I think needless to say, everybody knows the reputation of Penn State. You're going to have a blast. It's a wonderful campus. I started in Harrisburg, then I went to University Park. But one of the things that happened was I got this letter in the mail in my sophomore year. And it was so interesting because honestly, Steve, I think it came to Trinidad.
Hmm.
So my home address was, of course, in my international address. I don't know if you recall or not whether you guys were doing international mailings then. Were you?
Parents. Yeah, to parents or
There we
family
go,
members. It would have
members.
gone, yeah, to family
So
members.
the first impression that I had was, "This is really expensive paper." It was thick, the envelope was heavy. I'm like, "Is this money in this? Like, what is this?" So I opened it, and it was just this wonderful invitation, expressing that I had met the criteria academically to join this NSCS. And I just felt honored, a small islander from Trinidad to have, a huge national, association. You even just, who I am. It made my parents so proud. It felt like, okay, I'm doing something right. So, of course, without a doubt, I joined NSCS, and the induction ceremony was just completely amazing. It was a room in Penn State of hundreds of students, first year and soft second years, and it just felt like the atmosphere just felt like this was something big. So
Mhm.
everybody was so invested. Everybody really was, listening, about what this type of association can do for you, not just while you're in school, but when you leave school. And then the founder of this national association was there. And the story that you told, I cannot forget it. You described how you had this idea. I think you were at Georgetown, right?
George Washington University.
George Washington
Yep,
University.
yep.
And it was just about trusting your crazy ideas. You're having lasagna, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Lasagna.
Yes, you can even see I still have the little sign right behind me. It says, "Trust your crazy ideas." Do you see it? I don't know if
It's
you can see
one of
it.
my mottos, thanks to you. Okay. So you were describing how you were having a lasagna dinner with a friend, and you just had this crazy idea that you wanted to find a way to bring high performing sophomores together to really just create a platform, not just for networking, but for investing in the future,
Yeah.
of students like myself. So I was so inspired by that. And I decided after the ceremony, I'm gonna trust my crazy idea and introduce myself to you. So
Yep.
you had a whole queue of people waiting for you. I waited in line. I was completely nervous. Again, a very small, Caribbean girl. I just wanted to say thank you for choosing me to be a part of this association. I would love to be connected. And you looked at me and you said, "Awesome. Give me your email. I'll connect with you." And I thought that was the craziest thing I ever heard, that a whole CEO wants to connect with me. So I gave you my email, and I knew for a fact you were going to forget about me because, you have important things to do. Lo and behold, 2 weeks later, I got an email from Steve Loflin saying, "Hey, nice to meet you, Mira. Let me connect you with the local chapter. Would love to make sure that you're ingrained." And the rest is history. So I will forever be your fan. I am really in debt just how inspiring the culture within NSCS was. I think it definitely shaped my perspective on the possibilities, especially when you trust your crazy ideas and just go after things. The sky is the limit.
I remember that. I remember meeting you too, and, that was kind of a long time ago now, which is, amazing. But it's funny that you say that because one of the things you just said in telling that story was like, "Oh, I probably had more important things to do." But I've always felt like the most important thing that I do is get to work with incredible students just like you. And I knew if you could connect with your chapter, it would be really your chapter leaders, it would be great to get you involved. But what you did, which I really appreciated, was to go just one step further. And you actually became interested in our National Leadership Council. And it was one of those things, again, where I think you might have stepped a little bit outside of your comfort zone to think about becoming a part of the National Leadership Council. And so I remember, you going through the process and then you became the part of that organization, you became the
Yeah.
president, became a part of the board of directors. And
Yep.
so I just think sometimes when you get something in the mail or any kind of opportunities that might present themselves, I think a lot of people's inclination is to be like, I'm not sure if I want to do this or why would
Mhm.
I do this? But I think just getting to know you over these years and then you just telling that story, I do think
part of your success story has been that you do say yes to things, right? And you have an open mind
Yeah.
about what this potentially could do, that you don't know what it could do, but it could do something. And I just think in college, you get exposed to so many things. There's so many ways to become active or involved or engaged. And I do think that your story is just a reminder that if you say yes and you take the initiative and you kind of reach out, you just
Yeah.
don't know where it will go, right?
I love that, and I love that you brought up NLC, the National Leadership Council (NLC), because that also has an incredible story that I can share.
Mhm.
And the message really is just not doubting yourself. Because as you said, I stepped outside of my comfort zone. Locally in my chapter in Penn State, I was the vice president, so loved, being involved on campus activities. And then I got the email from national about the NLC and this leadership opportunity to be on a national board. And absolutely did not think that I would be chosen. Absolutely thought that there would be more qualified and better students than myself, but I did not want to be the one that limited myself from pursuing something. Again, trust your crazy ideas.
Right, right.
So I just decided to apply. And I'm like, if I don't get it, that's okay. At least I tried. So really interesting story. And I'm not sure if I ever told you this.
Ooh, well, good.
So my favorite person, Marie. I remember,
Uh-huh,
and this is why I'm just so in love with Marie. So
yep.
I applied to be vice president again because I was the vice president locally. I applied to be vice president, and I hadn't heard back from anyone. So I assumed after a while I just didn't get it. Totally fine. And then I got a call from Marie.
Mhm,
And it was, I didn't know her at that time. And she said, "Hey, Mira, thank you so much for applying. We had tons of applicants. Really appreciate the time that you put into it. Everybody was really competitive. So, of course, I'm just waiting to hear, sorry, we decided to move on to other applicants."
mhm,
But rather, what she said was, we compared all of the applications that we received, and we know that you applied for vice president. Well, we actually want to offer you the position of the president. And
mhm.
I completely almost dropped my phone, right? So how on earth did this happen? And
Yeah,
I mean, I was flabbergasted. And I said, Me?" And she's
mhm,
like, "Yep, we know what you're doing, in Penn State. We see how active you are. Your application stood out. If you say no, it's fine." And I'm like, I'm not saying no.
right.
Absolutely. Count me in. So, and the NLC honestly was kind of defining for me. Just to even be on a national board, it was my first board of director opportunity in the United States. So to
Mhm,
actually be with true CEOs, not, just on a campus level, but people who are running multi-million dollar companies, hear how they think, be exposed to them, their leadership, learn from them, that really did set off my career. So it really was something that I cherish and has shaped me into the leader that I am. So
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that part of the story, but I do remember, Marie and how involved she was, and I'll make sure she hears this story too, so, she is reminded of that great time. I think you know, one of the things I wouldn't have ever imagined too is, we had our 20th anniversary celebration of NSCS. And I remember when we were planning that event, one of the things that we started talking about was, oh, how are we going to manage the way that the event runs and who's going to be, a part of the podium and helping us do it. And it was the same thing. It's like, all of us doing the planning was like, well, we should get Mira involved a little bit. And I don't I'm assuming that you remember that event, and now
oh
that
my gosh, how can I forget?
you've done several, of those events with us now, but, the
Mhm.
20th, I think, was really, like, a pivotal
Special.
point because as
Yeah.
an honor society, turning 20 years old, that was a big
Mhm.
deal, going from the crazy idea to,
Mhm.
here we are at 20 years, and I was so happy when you agreed to kind of be the hostess of the evening and sort of the MC of the whole experience, and you did such a great job, but I was especially happy too when General Powell
Yes.
agreed to
Mhm.
be there and to be a speaker, having been
Yeah.
involved with NSCS on a couple of levels over the years. What was that like for you too, like getting to be there at that event? And
It
would you
was
have ever imagined?
unbelievable. It was probably the most glamorous thing I did in my life at that time. It was phenomenal. I mean, it was a spectacular event in Washington, DC, well attended. It really was just inspiring to be in the room. And then, of course, as you said, being in the same room with General Powell, I'm hearing from him, hearing his story. He is a force and a legend, right?
Mhm.
So of course, a loss to us now, but someone that we at that time admired for all the work that he was doing. And that was the type of platform that NSCS provided. Myself, other students that were in the room, it really gave us the exposure of a lifetime. It put us in places that we would not be able to put our own selves in. And for me, even just being the host of such a pivotal event was such an honor. And I took a lot from that, and I still have so much that I cherish because of that. So.
Yeah, and it just goes back to your original story. Like, I just think about it all the time when if you would have decided not to join, for example, or not to become a part of the organization, just sort of the experiences that would not have ever existed. And obviously you may have chosen to do other things which would have created other experiences. But I do think it goes back to the way that you look at things from the positivity side and let's see what I can do. Which reminds me, and we also had our 30th anniversary just now it's like close to 2 years, a year and a half ago or so. And you were kind enough to come back and sort of do a repeat performance there, which was amazing. But beyond that, after that event, this sticks in my mind so clearly. I want to talk about this for a few minutes because I do think it's something that would be great for people to understand after hearing how you came to the United States and you ended up in Pennsylvania at Penn State and all of those things. And so we were having dinner after we had our 30th anniversary. We did our own celebration, right? Like this is us celebrating another successful event. And I really love that. And I just remember conversationally, we were talking about some things, and you told me that you were about to have a pop up for a fashion design label that you had started. And I was kind of like, wait, what? Like, what are you doing? And you're like, yes, it's this weekend. And I just remember how excited you were about it. But I want to hear about that in a second. But before that, you sort of gave me a little bit of the backstory about when you were thinking about going to college and
Yeah.
how your parents were so involved in that process, which made you have to prioritize some things. Like,
Oh my goodness,
maybe
yes.
tell that story because I think so many students get conflicted about family involvement
Yeah.
and what is my passion and what does passion even mean maybe when you're a high school student or right into college. So,
Oh, yeah, happy
remember
to
that
tell that
story? Do you remember
story.
that
Oh, yeah.
story?
Of course I do. And I love you for bringing it up. So I'm so excited to talk about this. So, and this is probably quite relatable to
Mhm.
a lot of students whose parents come from certain either backgrounds, such as mine. Like my parents are Nigerian. I am a Nigerian, born Trinidadian. So
Yep.
grew up in Trinidad and Tobago. Born to Nigerian parents, so I have that kind of multicultural blend, and with that comes high expectations, right?
Mhm.
So really and truly, my dad is a medical doctor. My mom is an optometrist. So both parents in the medical field. They were very clear about the options that I had for a career. They were very clear that it had to be one of three. A doctor, lawyer, or engineer. I mean, that's just the options that I had on the table. So I always had a passion for healthcare. I grew up running around the hospital. With my dad. He would be
Mhm.
he'd be on rounds, seeing patients, and my mom would be stuck, in the office. My dad would have to run, pick us up, come back to the hospital, and just tell the nurses, keep an eye on this child. So I was exposed at a very early age, and I just developed that passion. So it was not a tough decision for me to decide to go the healthcare route. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, but the one thing I would say, my mom said this to me over and over again. She said, I know all of my children. You're the firstborn, and I know the qualities that you have. You are not the doctor. So she always said that I don't see you as the doctor. Healthcare is fine, but not the doctor. So for me, I didn't know what that meant. I mean, if I wasn't a clinician, what would I be? And truth be told, at Penn State, I majored in biochemistry and molecular biology. I was heading down the pre-med route. Between my junior and my senior year, I came back home to Trinidad. I shadowed some surgeries, really thinking that I was preparing for that. And I very quickly realized that my mom was right because all the surgeries that I shadowed, I fainted flat out. I just could not stand it. I mean, I was still stubborn, so I applied and I still pursued med school. I got interviewed at Howard University, and during the interview, they took us to the cadaver lab, and I nearly fainted again, and I ran out screaming. So I could not stand it. So I learned the hard way that I was not the doctor. But what I decided to do is take what many would call a gap year.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's a good thing so that you can discover yourself. Because sometimes you're heading down the path, you have on your blindfolds, you're not really seeing what options, and all of a sudden something changes, or it doesn't work out the way that you expect, and you can feel completely lost. You can feel like you no longer know what to do with your life. You no longer have a solution. It's okay to take that time off for yourself. So it was supposed to be a gap year, but of course I went home. I worked for the Ministry of Health, which is our healthcare agency, and my dad convinced me to get an MBA. So I enrolled in my first master's. I got an MBA there. So while I was working with the Ministry of Health, I became exposed to the non-clinical side of healthcare, which is healthcare administration. I didn't even know it existed. I'd never heard about healthcare administration in my life. So here is this Penn State grad, 21, turning 22. I'm in all these high level meetings with the Minister of Health and all these different, executives about hospitals. And they're just saying, we don't have supplies, we don't have drugs, we need more doctors. And there are all these administrative type of issues. And I was completely confused as to who's going to solve this problem. And that's how I began to understand that there was another side of healthcare. So after my MBA, I came to George Washington University. I got my master's of healthcare administration. And then
Mhm.
after that, I landed at Johns Hopkins Medicine. So I came to the health system to do my fellowship in healthcare administration. It was a 2-year fellowship, fantastic experience, really being trained by the best on how to run a massive healthcare institution. And then I've been, since I finished my fellowship, I've remained at Johns Hopkins, been promoted into my current role, which is administrator of the Department of Anesthesiology and Clinical Care Medicine. So I did take that linear path into healthcare. Yes, it wasn't quite what I expected, but it still was it's a fulfilling career in healthcare. But let me get back to your question about fashion. So the reason my parents were so emphatic about my options was because I was an art student. I did not want anything to do with science, math, none of that. I loved arts. I loved painting. I loved anything with my hands. And I loved fashion. I always tell everyone I knew how to sketch before I knew how to write. So
Mhm.
I thought I wanted to be, in arts and specifically in fashion design. My mom said, and yes, mom, if you're listening, you can't deny this. She said, I am not going to pay for your schooling if you do arts. The only thing that we're going to support is medicine or, healthcare, because that's going to give you a stable income. When you're done with that, feel free to do whatever else you want with your life. But if
Mhm.
you want us to support you, you're going to, do the stable career. So of course, when it comes to money, I have sense. I took that option. I was like, all right, I'll do what they're going to help me pay for.
Right.
But then once I did that, and this was really as of 2024, coming out of the pandemic, in healthcare, it's really just been a life changing experience for all of us. Just being so exposed to, a national, global pandemic and the operations and coming down from that. What stayed with me is, what do you want to do before you leave this earth? What is it in you that you want to pursue? And that's when fashion, kind of came back to the front of my mind. I've always still been, sketching has never really gone away from me. But I decided I'm going to pursue this. So I'm so
Mhm.
excited that in 2020, I launched my fashion brand called MAP Designs, MAP Designs. And when we met, I was just about to have my first pop up. I think the brand was just about like 4 or 5 months old at that time. And it was my first time, in the Mall of Columbia, showing my designs, my clothing, and it was just amazing. So it's something that it's like my passion, my baby.
Mhm.
It's also my relief because, of course, when you have such a demanding career, it's great to have an outlet. And for
Mhm.
me, this creative outlet is actually fueling me and allowing me to kind of continue to be inspired, even in my own role in healthcare. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
great. And then you've done some fashion weeks now, right?
I have. So interest, and this kind of goes back again to networking.
Mhm.
So I attended. So there's DC Fashion Week. I attended a DC Fashion Week event in 2024, and with one of my girlfriends. So we got
Mhm.
there. It was really crowded. She wasn't too excited, so she wanted to leave. And as I was leaving, this gentleman was coming in, and he asked, "Oh, are you guys leaving?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we're leaving." He's like, "Anyway, connect with me." So he gave me his contact, and lo and behold, he's the founder of DC Fashion Week,
Oh,
Ian Williams. So
uh-huh.
that was in 2024. So yeah, when I did that pop up that we were talking about, someone came up to my table and commented that, "Hey, you should be in DC Fashion Week." And then a light bulb came up to my mind, like, wait a minute, I have a contact information for the founder. So I reached out after the pop up, and long story short, we were able to have our first runway show in DC Fashion Week. And then that was in the spring of last year, 2025. And then in fall, we also debuted in New York Fashion Week. So it's been a really exciting time for me, for MAP Designs. And I'm just really excited to see what the future holds.
I love that story, and I think it's just a good reminder. It kinda goes back to this is sort of an iteration on trust your crazy idea, right?
Yes,
Because even back when you knew that you were interested in art, you didn't allow yourself to kinda give up on that while
right.
you were kind of following through on your commitment to try to, satisfy your family and help them be, willing to pay. And that's the truth for a lot of students. You're in that position where you have to really decide, can I do this or not do this because I need my family's support, or maybe you don't. And I
And
know
I
there's
think
going
she
to
has
always
been.
be artists that will say, I had to do this, and they just kind of veer against the grain and go in a different direction. And oftentimes they are successful. But I think the path that you took is just a reminder that paths can look very different for different people. And I think yours probably aligns with what a lot of people have to think about and prioritize. So I think that's amazing. And I really congratulations on everything that you've been doing. It's been
Oh
great
my
to
gosh, thank
watch.
you so much. And I definitely want to say that it worked out, right? Because really and truly, people will tell you that fashion is a very expensive endeavor. So
Mhm.
I think even just having a stable career is allowing me to actually pursue this in the way that I want to. So it wasn't a trade off for me. I think now that I'm understanding, it really was just setting me up to be successful, to be able to
Yeah.
pursue my passions. So, appreciate that. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Sometimes it's like a patience game too, right? Like,
Mhm.
I think when you're younger, especially, you want everything to happen right now. Like, I wanna do this right
Yes.
now. I wanna do it right now. And sometimes, like, taking some time and distance, and even what you shared about taking a gap year
Yeah,
to really step away and do some things that could better inform your decision-making
right.
process, and maybe not feeling the urgency in the same way that, could potentially be not as good for you because you're being so urgent about things. You might make decisions that you could regret, but you never know, right? You have to just do things. But your story and the path that you've taken, I think, has been fun to watch, obviously, but it's also just a good reminder to so many people that are making decisions about their future, that there's all kinds of ways that you can tackle it. And I think you've done a great job. So, congratulations to you on that.
Thank you for inspiring me from the very beginning. I appreciate you.
Oh, no, not at all. And I will say this too, before we wrap up. You never know either. Like when I met you as long ago as I did, and the path that we just heard about that you've taken, what also made me really kind of proud is like when I kind of randomly had a family member that was showing up at your hospital campus for a surgery. And I just remember like pinging you, like, is this where you are? And you're like, yes. And then I was telling you what was going on. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to jump in and help you and do everything I can. And I think that's the thing about relationships too. Like when you realize that, well, particularly with NSCS, there's so many members that are doing so many incredible things. You never know when you're going to intersect. But because of the relationship that we had, who would have ever imagined way back at Penn State
I
the
know.
ways that we would have intersected and everything else? So thank you for all the ways that you've supported the organization and me personally. I really do appreciate it. And I think your story, I hope, will be something to remind students that, join things and become a part of things because you just don't know where those things will take you.
I absolutely agree, and thank you for creating this fantastic platform and opportunity for students. I definitely think that the networking that it provides is life changing, and it really is just a pleasure to still be connected with you. So excited, for you for NSCS and to continue to grow with you. So
Oh, well, thank you, Mira. And thank you for all the great scholar scoop that you shared today. And we'll have to do this again sometime soon.
sounds amazing. Thanks, Steve.